For context purposes, I was about 10 years old at the time, and am female. Now to the story. I was really excited because my grandparents were going away for a weekend and allowed me watch their house while they are away, since we live right across the street from my grandparents' house. My parents said this was fine. Honestly, my parents let me do a lot of things during my childhood that in hindsight as a now adult myself, I should have never done. I have had my fair share of creepy experiences, but by some miracle made it through unscathed. So as any 10-year-old with a sibling, I was excited some space all to myself. My grandparents didn't leave a key, but instead let the back door unlocked for me. Stupid, I know, but it was a very safe neighborhood and nothing had ever happened the million times before. And this detail is important, so do keep it in mind. So I make my way across the street to their house, water the plants, feed the cats, get their mail, and do my house-watching duties. Once they are finished, I decided that I would spend my time there watching some movies and relaxing in the back room of the main floor. Time has passed as they do when you are engrossed in movies, and now it's dark out. I am ripped out of my movie by knocking at the front door. I am not worried by this. My grandparents are popular enough and do have friends that stop by. I figure that if I let the door go unanswered, they will understand my grandparents are not home and they will just leave. The knocking continues and the doorbell rings 1 or 2 more times and then it stops. Figuring they must have left, I happily return to my movie. Then without warning, the knocking continues, instantly intensifying. The sounds echo through the house and it sounds like they are surrounding me. Whatever calm, relaxed state I was previously in was gone and my gut was telling me something was wrong. I was confused as to why this person wouldn't just leave if they thought no one was here. My panic was increasing and my 10-year-old mind was racing trying to figure out what was going on. All the while, the deafening barrage of doorbells and pounding on the door continues incessantly. Then suddenly again, without warning, it stops again, and I've never been so grateful for silence. I decide to summon my bravery and look out the window, hoping I can recognize the car and realize this was all a misunderstanding. I have always been a very paranoid and was hoping this was just another unnecessary scare. So first, a little outline of my grandparents' house. It's a 1-floor house with only a front and back door that has a brick walkway leading from front to back. Okay, so there I am, starting to peek through window to see if I can recognize the car. Instead, I am locked eye to eye with a man I have never seen before in my life. I can only imagine the terror in my eyes and covering my face. I tried to examine this man. His eyes showed nothing, no fear, no surprise, no confusion. They were completely void of emotion. I was looking to find some kindness, or hope, or something to try to ease my fears and tension. Well, I found quite the opposite of that. Suddenly his face shifted, looking more determined, and he broke our gaze and kept walking. My brain was screaming at me that something was wrong, very wrong. Then it hit me, and I realized what my head was trying to tell me. He is going to the back of the house, to the unlocked door. He was going to 10-year-old defenseless me alone in this empty house. I am ashamed to admit it, but I froze. Everyone, me included, always talks so much smack in horror movies when the victims freeze while the bad guys come to hurt or kill them. Trust me, I knew I need to go move, but my body would not allow it. To say my mind was moving 1,000,000 miles a minute would be putting it lightly. What do? Do I call the cops? Do I run and hide? Do I run to my house? All the time telling myself every second I waste is another second closer to him getting inside. Finally, after being angry at myself for wasting precious time now with tears streaming down my face, I grab the cordless phone, early 2000s, and run into the bathroom and lock the door. In the back of my head the whole time, knowing/hoping this could all still be a misunderstanding, I didn't want to call the police. I didn't want them to come and for everything to be fine and I waste everyone's time and look stupid. Not to mention I was and am a very shy person. Needless to say, I knew I needed help diffusing this situation, so as the child that I was, I called my mom. At this point, I was truly hysterical, barely able to breathe, let alone get out words. Somehow she was able to understand that I was at Grandma's, and there was a strange man walking around to the back of the house. In a stern, almost angry voice, she just said, "I will be right there," and hung up. I clutched the phone like my depended on it and crouched in the corner of the bathroom waiting for the man to come in and do God knows what. I felt like I waited for hours as gasped for air in between deep, fearful cries. The silence is broken by the sound of the back door opening, and with it my stomach dropped. unsure if this was my mother or the strange man whose dead eyes terrified me. After endless moments of pure terror, my mother calls out that it's her and it's safe to come out. In one swift motion, I jump up, rip open the door, and run into my mother's sheltering arms. I just stayed there for a while, unable to speak, still processing what just occurred, and feeling finally safe in my mother's arms. After a while, I was able to get out, asking what happened to the man. She told me she found him around the back of the house and immediately approached him, asking what he was doing. He stated he was looking for an address and worriedly stumbled away to his car when he then drove away. There is no way that this man was looking for an address. Why would he continue to pound and pound on the door when no one answered? Why would he walk around to the back of the house? Nothing about that looks like someone seems for an address. After asking around, I heard that sometimes people do that when they are looking to break into a house. They pound on the door and make sure no one answers and no one in home while they break in. But why, when he saw I was inside, did he continue to go to the back of the house is the most ominous question. I will never know that man's intentions that night, and honestly, I don't know if I want to know. Thankfully, we never saw him again. And no, the police were never called, not to my knowledge anyway. My mother watched the house for me for the rest of the weekend as I was too scared to return until the house was no longer empty. Obviously, this story could have ended in many horrible ways, and I am forever grateful to my mother coming to my rescue. In hindsight, she is very lucky the man did not have a weapon and was instantly scared off when she arrived. This story may not sound like much to you, but to someone who was already paranoid and afraid of most people and things, it was enough to shake me to my core. I still, 15 years later, have irrational fears that haunt me some days and nights. And I will always be haunted by those empty dead eyes. I want you to picture the middle of nowhere. Rural Kentucky, an iconic country home, ranch style. The owners are wealthy. The closest neighbors live 15 entire minutes away. The closest gas station is a half hour. Walmart, 40 minutes. Those are the circumstances under which I was raised. Then there's me, a pretty typical 20-year-old who was born and raised in a relatively wealthy family. I was lucky enough to have been born to a father who owned a store in a mid-sized city. The city itself saw a major population growth in the 10 years after my father had purchased the store, and it produced enough income that we immediately became the 1% in the state. Probably the entire country, too. My father took the money that he made from this store and used it to purchase real estate, which produced more money. So we kinda had buckets of money laying around. For some reason or another, my father thought the ideal life was away from civilization, which is why he built this ranch home out in the middle of nowhere. It was always a bit of an inconvenience living life. After all the money in the world means nothing if you don't have stores to spend it at. But the older I got, the more my father educated me on finances. He also said that he didn't want us being corrupted by metropolitan living. I didn't really agree with him, but I respected him. There were many nights that I spent at the home alone. I was always a fairly mature kid, so my parents naturally gave me a lot of responsibility. The first time I was home alone, I must have been 12 years old. And considering we had a house full of expensive guns, alcohol, and hunting equipment, you can understand how much trust my parents really had in me. There wasn't very much in the world I wasn't prepared for. But there was one experience in particular. Something that happened a few weeks ago that I still think about all the time. Sits in my memory, haunting me. It happened one night when I was alone. My father had a business meeting on Saturday morning. So he got a hotel Friday night in the city with my mom. This left me home alone to watch the castle by myself. Again, something I have done a million times and never thought twice about. I have always been interested in business ventures online. The thing I have been experimenting with that night was video marketing. I was interested in making something go viral. Over the course of a few weeks, I probably had created 6 or 7 solid viral video attempts, but only one of them accumulated any attention, and it was a measly 100,000 views. Anyway, I remember sitting in my home office working on a cat video. On the far side of my room is my window. I can see the backyard. There's a mountainous structure in our backyard, basically a really big rock. It's pretty tall, probably about 50 or 60 feet maybe, and in front of it is all farmland. My father grew wheat, although he paid people to do most of the work. But here was the thing. There was a very strange shadow on the rocks. There were some lights from the electrical posts in the field, and it was as if someone was moving around them or something. This was absurd. You guys know how tall those electric posts are. The idea that someone would climb on top of one, or that there was some kind of animal or something on it, really freaks me out. I really didn't want to lose electric either, as I was really into that cat video. I looked out the window to see what was going on, and all I could see was a shadowy figure on the light post near the light. My immediate thought was that there was some kind of freak that came out here and climbed on top of it. But I couldn't imagine why anyone would do that. I put my horror movie-based fear to the back of my mind and rationalized that it must have been some kind of animal that had climbed up there. Maybe a large cat? It was far away enough that I could not give you a rough size. Could have been a bear, person, cat for all I knew. I just knew something was up there. Just to be on the safe side, I grabbed a pistol and my flashlight to go check out the situation. I made my way out there slowly. I got more nervous as the moments went by. Each step seemed to bring me closer to the unknown. My fear grew with the increasing distance between me and my house. The grass outside was dry. It was warm out. I slowly got closer and closer to the pole. By the time I got close enough to see the figure up there, I noticed that it was gone. I stood there in silence for a moment, contemplating what it could have been. I looked around to see if whatever animal may have been up there had fallen to death. I didn't see anything in the general vicinity. I always hated leaving animals to die like that. I got down on one knee to say a prayer for whatever animal had been up there. I couldn't imagine that it didn't die, whatever it was. While I was praying, I heard a hiss behind me and felt it. Scratch. Claws dug into my back. I reacted the only way I knew how and flung my body around. I thrusted my elbow against whatever was behind me. I hit it really hard. In an almost instinctual way, I got away from it and immediately began firing my pistol in its direction. I must have gotten 5 shots off by the time I stopped and realized what I had done. I had obliterated a raccoon. It really freaked me out. The entire experience was kind of traumatic. Staying home alone was never quite the same. I called my dad and told him what had happened before driving myself to the hospital. I had to get a rabies shot, unfortunately, which may have been the most painful experience of my life. I discovered the next day that I had inadvertently shot 2 of the windows out of my mom's SUV. My parents made me pay for that with my own money. And no, I was not nearly as rich as them. The only money I had to my name was the money I made from my personal business ventures online. It was kind of lame. My dad always hammered into my head that the bullets I fire are my responsibility, no matter what. It's not a bad lesson to learn for anyone interested in owning a gun. When I got out of the hospital, I went home and finished making that cat video. It only got 3,000 views. You can't win them all. But yeah, I guess the moral of the story is that even rich people who are secluded as hell in the middle of nowhere still have to deal with stupid stuff like this happening to them too. Dang raccoons. I'm no stranger to being home alone. It used to bother me when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, it's slow faded away. I'm 20 and still live at home with my mom to help pay bills. On her days off, she will go to my older sister's, leaving me home alone at night. Backstory: we've lived in this house for going 9 years. We had a few weird things happen when we first moved in, such as doors closing. The weirdest would be when my mom was in her room, which is at the back of the house. Between midnight and 4 a.m., she would hear what sounds like something running by the house. We have a side yard with a shed, but we have the area fenced off. Now I understand some will say, oh, it's a deer. I do live in the BFE. I know what a deer sounds like, and I know it doesn't run on 2 feet. After the first month, we didn't have any more issues. Jump forward to the present, almost 9 years later. I have switched to working overnights. I've always been more of a night owl. On my night off, my mom had gone to my sister's. I had fallen asleep early due to staying up all day to get stuff done. I'm typically a hard sleeper. I don't wake up for anything. I could sleep through a tornado and not even realize it. I strangely wake up very groggy. I just happen to roll over and look at my phone. 3:15 a.m. Weird. I sleep with a lamp in my room, so typically my whole room I can see. Dresser, TV, deer mounts, and my 2 rabbits. This night the room was dark, very dark. The more I woke up, the darker my room got. It was like a thick fog was hanging around. When I was fully awake, the only thing illuminated was my bed, and I felt I was not alone. I could feel the eyes following my every move. I don't scare easily. I'm very bold and fearless. But at that moment, I just wanted to curl up in the corner of my bed and hide under my blanket. This feeling of dread came over me, and I pulled my blanket over my head. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next day, I was supposed to meet my boyfriend to go to our favorite restaurant, Burgerland. I didn't feel like myself. I was angry and very short. That's not me. He kept asking me what was wrong, and I would try to explain this to him. We had a good lunch, and we hung out for a bit longer before I returned home. 4 nights later, I was leaving to take my boyfriend dinner on his overnight shift. At this point, it is about 10 p.m. Typically, when I step out of the store, I can head crickets, frogs, and cicadas. Tonight, it was dead silent. I made it to my truck and turned around because I felt like something was watching me. We don't have any outside lights besides our porch lights, so if there was someone or something, I wouldn't have been able to see it. I just feel like there is a presence charging at me. I became anxious and quickly climbed in my truck and shut the door. I didn't tell anyone about this and just figured it was my imaginations. Today, everything escalated. After 2 weeks of peace and quiet, the aura of my house changed. My mom is having surgery on Tuesday, so my older sister had come and got her. That was around 2 p.m. I had been sleeping and woke up to tell them bye. I had to be at work at 9 p.m., so I was getting as much sleep as possible. I woke up at 6:30, which is typical on work nights. I wake up, smoke a cigarette, and gather my stuff to shower. The bathroom door is straight across from mine, so I walk out of my door. Something is off. My cat is clawing at the carpet in front of the door and is crying very angrily. I place my ear to the door. The shower is on. I try to open the door and it's locked. I begin to think Mom must be in the shower, so I go back to my room and sit on my bed to wait. Then I hit me. My mom went to my sister's. I grab my phone and text her asking if her POS boyfriend came over to shower. She texts me back very quickly and says no. I panic. I get up quickly and quietly. I shut my door, lock it, and sit against. At the point I'm in fight mode, there was someone in my house and I was not okay with it. I called my mom. She had also spoke to my brother, but he was out of town. The shower was still on, so I make my way out of my room. I checked my mom's room. No one. I checked the living room and kitchen. No one. The front door was still locked with the deadbolt. I go back to my room and grab my large skinning knife. I was ready to fight. I was able to unlock the bathroom door with a screwdriver. I opened the door quickly and jerked the shower curtain back. There was no one. I was confused. What just happened? I call my mom and tell her. She was quiet. Then she says, I didn't want to scare you, but lately I've seen a lot of black shadows. The house has felt off. She then begins to tell me the last couple nights while I had been at work, she had heard scratching under her window when she gets up for work. She must be at work at 4 a.m. Living in BFE, Arkansas, we are surrounded by wildlife. I know what a possum, armadillos, and raccoons sound like. My mom said that was not an animal that was scratching on the window. I was 14 years old at the time. I'm a male, pretty typical. I would call myself a nerd. I like to play video games, and I'm pretty good at them too. When my friends and I play Fortnite online, I always do the best. I went through a really hard time though. The thing is, I have really bad allergies. Like horrendously bad. They're so bad that sometimes I sneeze blood. I mean, my nose is bleeding from the constant allergies, and then I sneeze blood all over the place like some kind of a freak. It sucked. When I was 14, my mom wanted to try something out. She came home one day with a mysterious bag containing something in it. I remember asking her what it was. I thought it was going to be some kind of a new type of tissue or some kind of air filter for the house. It wasn't any of that. It was a medicine. She said that this medicine was going to take care of my allergies. I really wanted to believe her. So, I started taking this new medicine and all seemed to be working for the first few weeks. I didn't notice anything being off and everything seemed fine. My usual springtime allergies were no more. As you might expect, I just continued on with life like any other 14-year-old would. I went back to playing video games, hanging out with my friends occasionally. I want to say it was about a month later that something started to change. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I wasn't feeling myself. I was in a bit of a brain funk. And it was strange because I normally feel really present and aware in the moment. I always attributed my mental agility to being the reason that I was the best out of all my friends at video games all these years. I mean, why else would I be? But I wasn't as good as I used to be, though. I wasn't the best out of my friend group anymore. The skill gap between myself and at least 2 of my other friends seemed to vanish completely. It was as if my skill level had gone down. I know it seems like a minor problem, but that really took me down a peg. I really enjoyed being the best there was, and now I wasn't. It made me feel sad, sadder than I've been in a long time. And it wasn't that I have never experienced tragedy or something else. I remember being really close with my grandfather. and he died when I was probably about 12 or 13, so I've gone through stuff before. But for some reason, not being the best in a video game really took a toll on my well-being. As weird as that might be to say, I gradually started pulling back from my friend group altogether. I would just play video games by myself. The social interaction seemed to be too much for me anymore. I didn't enjoy it like I used to. And that was when everything changed. I wasn't the person I had been before. And looking back, I'm surprised I didn't notice sooner. It all came to a head one night. My mom had some kind of work function, some kind of party or something like that. I don't even really remember what it was. I just remember thinking it was stupid. I felt really alone. My dad died when I was younger, and I was also an only child. So I was home by myself, 14 years old. You would think that a kid that age would love to be home by himself, but I didn't. I was horrified. I felt the feeling inside of myself that truly mortified me, petrified my bones. I wanted to kill myself. I just felt this intense sensation of worthlessness. I don't even know why either. I got good grades in school. I had friends, but I just didn't enjoy being around them anymore. I didn't know what the hell changed. I just had this overwhelming sense of loneliness. It was a dark, whispering voice in the back of my head that told me all of the horrible things that I hated to hear. This voice. It told me that I should be dead, that I was just a burden to my mother, that I didn't have any real friends, that all of the guys in my former friend group moved on and completely forgot about me, didn't even care that I was gone. And here I was, alone in this house, all by myself. Couldn't even think of a reason not to do it. I know exactly how I would do it if I wanted to. We watched a mental health awareness video in my psychology class at high school, and all you had to do was take as many pills as you could. And you would surely die. They called it a cocktail. I kind of wanted to have one myself. I remember sitting in my living room. I was trying to work up the nerve to actually swallow the pills. Couldn't bring myself to do it though. For some reason, something was stopping me, and I couldn't figure out what. The voice in my head made perfect sense. I had no reason left to live. No reason would ever present itself in the future either. I was a nothing in a big nothing world. I slapped my hand on the table. For some reason, that gave me the bursts of motivation I needed to start swallowing those pills. I opened the cocktail that I had made, just random stuff from the medicine cabinet. Nothing in particular. I was going to take them one by one. I had my mouth already open and everything. But my phone told me that there was a text message. By whatever stroke of luck that it hit me, I decided to answer the text before I decided to go. I slowly made my way to the other room and picked up my cell phone. Pressed the on button to see that it was my friend Walton. He was asking if I wanted to play with them. I texted back, yes. The next morning I told my mom about the incident. She was really concerned and wanted to send me for a psychiatric evaluation. But before we did that, my mom thought it might have had something to do with that allergy medicine that I was on. Well, it turned out that it was the entire cause of my depression. I was an otherwise happy and healthy kid. But that medicine had some particular side effects. Side effects that my mom did not mention to me when I started taking it. One of the major side effects was depression. It's been some time since I had been on that allergy medicine. It got put on recall. They literally had to take it off the shelves because it was making the users depressed and suicidal. I'm really thankful that I was able to escape that situation with my life. I realize how close I really was to hurting myself. I almost died. And I'll never forget that experience. Ever since then, I never want to be home alone again.